Marcus Chen had always been invisible. Even among the maintenance crew of the Galactic Defense Station Omega-7, he blended into the background like dust on old machinery. The aliens running the station barely noticed him as he crawled through ventilation shafts, fixed broken circuits, and kept the massive orbital fortress running smoothly. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, one of only 12 humans aboard a station housing over 3,000 beings from 47 different species, yet he might as well have been a ghost. The Zelkari commanders saw him as just another piece of equipment. The Thaxian engineers treated him like a barely sentient tool. Even the other humans on the station, all of them serving in various support roles, seemed to forget he existed. Marcus preferred it that way. While others complained about alien arrogance and human subjugation, he listened. While they argued about unfair treatment and species discrimination, he learned. And while they dreamed of the day humanity would prove itself among the stars, Marcus quietly prepared. The Galactic Coalition had reluctantly accepted Earth into their alliance 3 years ago, not out of respect, but out of necessity. Human space sat right in the path of the expanding Void Swarm, a machine intelligence that had already consumed 17 star systems. The Coalition needed every possible buffer between the swarm and their core worlds. Humans were expendable, numerous, and surprisingly adaptable to various environments. What they didn't expect was how quickly humans learned. Marcus had been working maintenance on Omega-7 for 18 months. In that time, he'd gained access to virtually every system on the station. His security clearance was minimal, but maintenance workers went everywhere. They fixed life support in command centers, repaired communication arrays in intelligence sections, and updated power conduits in weapons control. The aliens trusted him because they believed humans were too primitive to understand their technology. They were wrong. Marcus understood it perfectly. More than that, he'd been quietly documenting everything. Every system, every protocol, every weakness. His personal data pad, disguised as a standard maintenance scanner, contained detailed schematics of the station's most classified systems. The opportunity came during what the Coalition called a routine patrol action. 3 Void Swarm scout ships had been detected near the Kepler Nexus, a critical jump point that connected 6 major trade routes. The Coalition dispatched a small fleet to investigate, leaving Omega-7 with only a skeleton crew. Marcus was in the main computer core, supposedly upgrading cooling systems when the first distress signal arrived. "All vessels destroyed," came the crackling transmission from Admiral Korthax, the Drakmari fleet commander. "Swarm ships, not scouts. Full war vessels. They're adapting faster than predicted. Omega-7, prepare for possible contact." The station erupted into controlled chaos. Emergency protocols activated, blast doors sealed, and combat systems came online. Marcus continued his work, invisible as always, but his mind was racing. He accessed the tactical display through a maintenance terminal and watched as dozens of red blips appeared on the edge of sensor range. 43 Void Swarm vessels, moving in perfect formation toward Omega-7. The station's commanding officer, Supreme Commander Velthak of the Zelkari Empire, immediately began issuing evacuation orders for non-essential personnel. That included all humans, except for 3 who operated critical life support systems. Marcus wasn't one of them. As evacuation shuttles launched and the station's population dwindled to 800 combat personnel, Marcus made his choice. Instead of boarding the last human transport, he slipped away into the maintenance tunnels. No one noticed. No one ever did. He made his way to his real destination, Storage Bay 94, deep in the station's industrial section. Hidden behind legitimate maintenance supplies, Marcus had been building something the Coalition would never have allowed a human to possess. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Using salvaged Thaxian neural interface technology, Drakmari combat algorithms, and human intuition, Marcus had created what he privately called the Ghost Protocol. It was a combination of hardware and software that would allow a single operator to control multiple ship systems simultaneously, something Coalition doctrine claimed was impossible without a full AI consciousness. The Coalition banned artificial intelligence after the last AI war nearly destroyed the galaxy 2 centuries ago, but they'd never banned human creativity. Marcus connected the neural interface and felt the familiar tingle as the quantum processors linked with his consciousness. Suddenly, he wasn't just Marcus Chen anymore. He was the station itself. Every sensor was his eyes. Every weapon was his hand. Every shield generator was his skin. The feeling was intoxicating and terrifying at once. The Void Swarm arrived exactly as predicted. Their ships were organic-looking things, all curves and strange angles, as if they'd been grown rather than built. They moved with perfect coordination, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Commander Velthak's voice echoed through the station's communication system. "All combat personnel to stations. Prepare for defensive action. May the stars preserve us." The first exchange of fire lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Omega-7's heavy plasma cannons carved through space, striking 2 swarm vessels and sending them spinning into debris clouds. The swarm responded with focused energy beams that punched through the station's outer shields like paper. Marcus watched through the station's sensors as the battle unfolded. The Coalition forces fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The Void Swarm ships moved like a single organism, covering each other's weaknesses and exploiting every gap in the station's defenses. Within the first hour, Omega-7 had lost 60% of its weapons and 30% of its shields. The swarm was methodically dismantling the station piece by piece. That's when Marcus acted. He'd spent months studying Void Swarm tactics from classified battle reports. They were machines, which meant they followed patterns. They were efficient, which meant they prioritized targets logically. And they were networked, which meant they shared information instantly. All of this made them predictable. Marcus began with something small. He fired a spread of missiles from Launcher Base 7, not at the swarm ships, but into the debris field from their destroyed scouts. The explosions created a cloud of superheated metal fragments that scattered across multiple sensor bands. To organic eyes, it looked like random destruction. To machine intelligence, it looked like a massive electromagnetic signature that could hide a stealth attack. The swarm immediately shifted formation to counter the perceived threat, pulling 3 ships out of their assault pattern. That gave the station's damaged shields time to regenerate in that sector. Commander Velthak noticed the reprieve. "Weapons control, good thinking on that debris screen. Maintain defensive fire while we recalibrate shields." Marcus smiled in the darkness of Storage Bay 94. He was just getting started. For the next 30 minutes, he played the Void Swarm like a musical instrument. A carefully timed sensor pulse here made them think the station was charging a massive weapon. A shutdown of specific systems there convinced them an entire section was destroyed when it was only powered down. Random bursts of communication static suggested multiple human fleets were approaching when none existed. The swarm adapted to each deception, but adaptation took time. And time was what the station needed. Marcus was careful to make his interventions look like standard tactical responses. He routed his commands through existing systems, used normal communication protocols, and made sure everything appeared to come from the proper command channels. To the Coalition crew, it seemed like their officers were simply fighting brilliantly against impossible odds. But the swarm was learning too. Their attacks became more focused, their movements more unpredictable. They started ignoring his false signals and concentrating fire on critical systems. The station shuddered as massive energy beams punched through armor plating and destroyed entire decks. Marcus realized he was running out of tricks. The Ghost Protocol was powerful, but he was still just one person controlling systems designed for hundreds of operators. His neural interface was already showing warning signs of overload, and his vision was starting to blur. That's when he discovered something the Coalition had never bothered to tell humanity about Omega-7. Deep in the station's classified files, accessible only through maintenance pathways Marcus had mapped months ago, he found reference to something called the Omega Directive. It was a last resort protocol that could overload the station's core reactor and turn the entire facility into a massive fusion bomb. The explosion would destroy everything within a light-minute radius, including the Void Swarm fleet, and everyone still on the station. Marcus stared at the activation codes for nearly a full minute while plasma fire continued to rain down on Omega-7's failing shields. 800 Coalition personnel were counting on their commanders to save them. Millions of civilians in nearby systems were counting on the station to stop the swarm advance. But the battle was lost. Even if some miracle allowed them to destroy the current swarm force, more would come. The machine intelligence had tested their defenses and found them wanting. Within days, the entire sector would fall, unless someone made an impossible choice. Marcus reached for the activation controls, then stopped. There had to be another way. Humans were supposed to be creative, adaptable, unpredictable. They were supposed to find solutions others missed. He pulled up everything he knew about Void Swarm technology. Their ships were networked, sharing information and tactical data instantaneously. They adapted quickly to new threats, but relied on their collective intelligence to analyze and respond to changing conditions. What if he gave them too much to analyze? Marcus began activating every system on the station simultaneously. Not tactically, not strategically, just randomly. He fired weapons in all directions, charged shields to maximum power, then dropped them completely, broadcast on every frequency at once, and activated emergency protocols that contradicted each other. To organic minds, it looked like the station was having a complete breakdown. To the Void Swarm's collective intelligence, it looked like chaos incarnate. And machines hated chaos. The swarm fleet suddenly stopped their coordinated assault and began moving erratically, trying to process the massive influx of contradictory data from the station. Their formation broke apart as individual ships tried to respond to dozens of apparent threats simultaneously. That's when Marcus hit them with everything Omega-7 had left. He concentrated all remaining firepower on a single swarm vessel, the largest one that seemed to be coordinating the others. The combined fury of 16 heavy plasma cannons, 32 missile launchers, and 6 experimental particle beam weapons struck the ship within a 3-second window. The swarm vessel disappeared in a brilliant flash of light, and suddenly the rest of the fleet stopped moving entirely. Marcus stared at the tactical display in amazement. Without their command ship, the Void Swarm vessels were just floating in space, apparently unable to function independently. The machine intelligence that drove them needed centralized coordination to operate effectively. He'd found their weakness purely by accident. Commander Veltak's voice echoed through the station. "All weapons, target the remaining vessels while they're disabled. This may be our only chance." The battle that followed was less a fight than an execution. The swarm ships, cut off from their command network, offered no resistance as Omega-7's weapons systematically destroyed them one by one. When the last enemy vessel was reduced to drifting debris, the station erupted in celebration. Emergency lights switched to normal illumination, damage control teams rushed to repair critical systems, and communication arrays began broadcasting news of the impossible victory to Coalition High Command. Marcus quietly disconnected his neural interface and began the long walk back to his quarters. His head pounded from neural feedback. His hands shook from adrenaline, and his vision kept blurring. But he was alive, and so was everyone else on the station. As he passed through the main corridor, he overheard 2 Thaxian officers discussing the battle. "Incredible tactical thinking," one was saying. Velthak's decision to overwhelm their processing capacity with random data was brilliant. "The humans have a word for it," the other replied. "They call it thinking outside the box. Perhaps we should study their tactical methods more carefully." Marcus smiled and continued walking. Let the coalition think their officers had won the day through superior strategy. Let them analyze and debate and theorize about human tactical innovation. He had work to do. Because if one human maintenance worker could defeat an entire Void Swarm fleet, imagine what humanity could accomplish if they stopped being overlooked and started being taken seriously. The thought of that possibility made his headache fade and his hands steady. It was time to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of. 3 weeks after the Battle of Omega-7, Marcus Chen was still invisible. The Coalition had promoted Commander Velthak to Supreme Admiral for his brilliant tactical innovation. They'd awarded medals to every officer on the station. They'd even given commendations to the human life support technicians for maintaining critical systems under extreme duress. Marcus received nothing except a standard maintenance efficiency report and orders to repair the damage from the battle. He didn't mind. Recognition would have meant scrutiny, and scrutiny would have revealed the Ghost Protocol. Better to remain in the shadows while the Coalition celebrated their victory and completely missed the real lesson of what had happened. The galaxy was changing, though. News of the Omega-7 victory spread through Coalition space like wildfire. For the first time since the Void Swarm had emerged, a major enemy force had been completely destroyed without losing a single Allied vessel. Military analysts were calling it the turning point of the war. They were wrong. It wasn't a turning point. It was a warning. Marcus had spent every spare moment since the battle studying captured swarm technology and intercepted transmissions. What he'd discovered made his blood run cold. The fleet that attacked Omega-7 hadn't been an invasion force or even a major scouting expedition. It had been a testing probe designed to evaluate Coalition defenses and tactics. And now the Void Swarm knew exactly how to counter everything the Coalition could throw at them. The machine intelligence was adapting. Already reports were coming in of new swarm vessels that operated independently of command ships. Their next attack would be unstoppable using conventional tactics, unless someone was prepared to think unconventionally. Marcus was in the middle of installing new power conduits in Section C when his personal communicator chimed. The message was brief and unsigned. "Storage Bay 94. 1 hour. Come alone." He stared at the screen for a long moment. No one knew about Storage Bay 94 except him. He'd chosen it specifically because it was off the main maintenance routes and scheduled for decommissioning. Even the station's computer system had forgotten it existed. Someone had been watching him. Marcus finished his work with mechanical precision while his mind raced through possibilities. Coalition intelligence? Unlikely. They would have simply arrested him. Void Swarm infiltrators? Possible, but they would have acted during the battle. Another human? That was the most terrifying option of all. He arrived at the storage bay exactly on time, tools in hand as if he was responding to a routine maintenance call. The bay was dark and apparently empty, filled with obsolete equipment and spare parts that would never be needed. "Hello, Marcus." He spun toward the voice and found himself facing another human. The man was tall and thin, with prematurely gray hair and the kind of pale complexion that came from spending too much time in artificial environments. Marcus had never seen him before, but something about his posture and the way he held himself suggested military training. "Do I know you?" Marcus asked, his hand moving instinctively toward the plasma cutter on his tool belt. The stranger smiled. "No, but I know you. Captain James Morrison, late of Earth Defense Force Special Operations, currently listed as missing in action and presumed dead following a classified mission near the Centauri cluster." Marcus relaxed slightly. Earth military personnel were supposed to be extinct. The Coalition had disbanded all human military units as part of the Integration Treaty, claiming they were unnecessary in the modern galactic environment. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "To offer you a choice," Morrison replied. "You can continue playing maintenance worker while the Coalition stumbles toward defeat, or you can help me prevent the extinction of the human species." "The Coalition won at Omega 7. Morrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The Coalition got lucky at Omega 7 because a maintenance worker figured out something their best tactical minds missed. But luck doesn't win wars, Marcus. Strategy does. And the Coalition's strategy is to use humanity as cannon fodder while their core species retreat to defensive positions." He activated a small holographic projector, filling the air between them with a three-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated confirmed Void Swarm positions, while blue showed Coalition forces. The pattern was clear even to Marcus's untrained eye. Human colonies formed a ring around the Coalition core worlds. Every defensive position, every forward base, every strategic outpost was located in human-controlled space. If the swarm broke through, they would have to destroy humanity before reaching a single Coalition homeworld. "We're not allies," Morrison continued. "We're a buffer zone. And when the swarm figures out how to counter what happened here, that buffer is going to disappear very quickly." Marcus studied the hologram. "What makes you think I can do anything about it?" "Because you already did." Morrison gestured toward the walls around them. "You turned a maintenance scanner into a quantum computer interface, created a neural link using salvaged alien technology, and single-handedly defeated a Void Swarm fleet, all while convincing everyone else that they did it themselves. You were watching during the battle? I've been watching you for months, ever since you started accessing classified files through maintenance protocols." Morrison's expression grew serious. "You're not the only one, Marcus. There are others like you throughout Coalition space. Humans who've learned to see past alien arrogance and understand what's really happening." He changed the hologram, showing personnel files for dozens of humans in various support roles across the galaxy: engineers, technicians, communications specialists, medical staff, all of them in positions where they could access critical information while remaining invisible to their alien superiors. "We call it the Underground," Morrison explained. "Earth's real military, hiding in plain sight while the Coalition believes humanity has been pacified. We've been preparing for the day when the aliens' true intentions become clear." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You're talking about rebellion." "I'm talking about survival." Morrison's voice hardened. "The Coalition will sacrifice every human in the galaxy to protect their precious core worlds. When that day comes, we need to be ready to protect ourselves." The hologram shifted again, showing technical specifications for ships, weapons, and equipment Marcus didn't recognize. The designs were clearly human in origin, but far more advanced than anything Earth had possessed before joining the Coalition. "How?" Marcus asked. "By learning from our enemies and our supposed allies. Every piece of alien technology we've encountered, every tactical innovation we've observed, every scientific breakthrough we've been excluded from." Morrison's eyes gleamed with fierce pride. "Humans adapt, Marcus. It's what we do best. While the Coalition has spent 3 years treating us like primitive servants, we've been studying everything they know and improving on it." Marcus stared at the hologram, his mind processing the implications. "You want me to join this underground? I want you to help lead it. What you did here proved something we've suspected for years. Human intuition combined with alien technology creates something more powerful than either could achieve alone. The Coalition fears artificial intelligence, but they've never considered the possibility of human intelligence enhanced by quantum processing. The Ghost Protocol," Morrison nodded, "multiplied across dozens of ships and thousands of personnel. Imagine what we could accomplish if every human in space had access to that kind of capability." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Marcus had spent 18 months perfecting a system that allowed him to control a single space station. Morrison was talking about extending that concept to entire fleets. "It's not that simple," Marcus said. "The neural interface technology is extremely dangerous. Prolonged use causes brain damage, psychotic episodes, and complete personality breakdown. I can only maintain connection for a few hours at a time without risking permanent harm." "We know," Morrison replied. "That's why we need your help to perfect it. Our research teams have made significant progress, but we need someone with practical experience to test the next generation of interfaces." He produced a small device from his coat, about the size of a data pad, but with an organic, flowing design that seemed to pulse with inner light. "This is a prototype bio-neural interface based on captured swarm technology. It creates a symbiotic relationship with human consciousness rather than simply overlaying alien systems." Marcus reached for the device, then stopped. "What aren't you telling me?" Morrison's expression became grim. "The testing phase is risky. We've had volunteers, but the success rate has been less than optimal." "Define less than optimal." 40% survival rate. Of those who survive, only 20% retain full cognitive function. Marcus pulled his hand back. "You want me to risk my life on a machine that kills more than half the people who use it?" "I want you to help us save the human species," Morrison replied quietly. "Because the alternative is watching every human colony in the galaxy burn, while the Coalition retreats to their core worlds and rebuilds their civilization on our graves." The storage bay fell silent, except for the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Marcus stared at the bio-neural interface, weighing his options. He could return to his invisible existence, fixing alien machines while the galaxy burned around him, or he could risk everything on the chance that humanity might find a way to survive. "If I do this," he said finally, "I want guarantees. Full technical specifications, complete medical data, and the right to modify the interface design based on my experience with the Ghost Protocol." Morrison smiled. "Agreed. But we'll need to work quickly. Our intelligence suggests the Void Swarm is preparing for a massive offensive within the next 6 months. If we're going to act, it has to be soon." Marcus picked up the bio-neural interface. It felt warm in his hands, almost alive. "Where do we start?" "With a test. There's a derelict swarm vessel drifting near the Kepler Nexus, apparently disabled during the recent battle. Coalition salvage teams haven't been able to access its central computer core because it requires a level of interface compatibility their technology can't achieve." "But this can?" Morrison nodded. "In theory. The bio-neural interface should allow you to connect directly with swarm consciousness protocols and extract tactical information. Data about their fleet movements, strategic objectives, and most importantly, their plans for countering what happened here." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "And if it doesn't work?" "Then you'll probably die horribly as the swarm technology tears your consciousness apart." Morrison's expression was matter of fact. "But if it does work, we'll have intelligence that could change the course of the entire war." "When do we leave?" "Tonight. I have a stealth ship hidden in the maintenance yards. We can reach the derelict within 12 hours and be back before anyone notices you're missing." Marcus looked around Storage Bay 94 at the equipment he'd used to build the Ghost Protocol and the spare parts that had hidden his secret for months. In a few hours, none of it would matter. Either he'd be dead, insane, or in possession of information that could save humanity. "One more question," he said. "How many others are there like me? Humans who've developed similar capabilities?" Morrison's smile was cold and calculating. "More than the Coalition suspects, but fewer than we need. That's why this mission is so important. If we can prove the bio-neural interface works, we can start mass production. Every human in space could have access to enhanced capabilities within months. And then? Then we stop being the galaxy's victims and start being its protectors, whether the Coalition likes it or not. Marcus pocketed the bio-neural interface and began gathering his tools. Give me an hour to finish my duties and file maintenance reports. I don't want anyone asking questions about my whereabouts. 1 hour, Morrison agreed. After that, everything changes. As Marcus left Storage Bay 94 for what might be the last time, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. The Coalition had overlooked him for months, treating him as just another piece of expendable human equipment. They were about to discover how expensive that mistake would be. The derelict swarm vessel waited in the darkness beyond Kepler Nexus, filled with secrets that could reshape the war. Marcus would either unlock those secrets or die trying. Either way, humanity's invisible war was about to begin. The derelict void swarm vessel hung in space like a metallic tumor, its organic curves twisted and blackened from battle damage. Marcus stared at it through the viewports of Morrison's stealth ship and felt his courage wavering. Up close, the alien craft looked less like a machine and more like something that had once been alive. Second thoughts? Morrison asked from the pilot's seat. Marcus touched the bio-neural interface clipped to his belt. Just trying to prepare myself for what might happen when I connect with that thing. The interface will protect you. In theory. That's very reassuring. Morrison guided their ship into the derelict's docking bay, which had been torn open by Coalition weapons fire. Emergency lights flickered weakly in the alien vessel's corridors, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently of their source. They suited up in standard EVA gear, but Marcus also carried a portable power unit and interface cables that would allow him to connect the bio-neural device to the swarm ship's systems. If everything went according to plan, he would be able to access the vessel's memory banks and extract tactical intelligence about the enemy's future plans. If things went wrong, the alien technology would turn his brain into pudding. The interior of the swarm vessel was a maze of organic-looking corridors and chambers that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Everything felt alive, as if the ship itself was some kind of vast organism rather than a constructed machine. Marcus had studied swarm technology for months, but being inside one of their vessels was completely different from examining sensor readings and battle footage. The central processing core should be this way, Morrison said, consulting a handheld scanner. Coalition analysis suggests it's located in the center of the vessel, protected by multiple layers of redundant systems. They moved deeper into the ship, past chambers filled with strange equipment that seemed to grow from the walls rather than being installed. Marcus noticed that his scanner was picking up unusual energy readings from deeper within the vessel. Morrison, he said, I'm getting active power signatures from the core. This ship isn't as dead as we thought. Are you sure? Marcus checked his readings again. The main systems are offline, but there's definitely something still functioning. It's almost like the ship is in some kind of hibernation state rather than being completely destroyed. They reached the central core chamber 15 minutes later. The room was vast, filled with organic computer systems that reminded Marcus more of neural tissue than electronic circuitry. At the center stood a pillar of crystalline material that pulsed with soft blue light. That's it, Morrison said. The central consciousness node. According to our research, that crystal contains the accumulated intelligence and tactical knowledge of the entire swarm collective. Marcus approached the pillar cautiously. His scanners showed it was definitely active, processing information at quantum speeds, even though the rest of the ship appeared dead. This isn't hibernation. It's a trap. What do you mean? The swarm left this ship here deliberately. They wanted someone to find it. Marcus backed away from the crystal. They're trying to learn about our technology the same way we're trying to learn about theirs. Morrison's face went pale behind his helmet faceplate. You're saying this whole mission is a setup? I'm saying the Void Swarm is more intelligent than anyone realized. They didn't just test our defenses at Omega-7, they tested our psychology. And now they're offering us exactly what we want most, access to their secrets. The crystalline pillar suddenly flared brighter, and Marcus felt a strange tingling in his mind. The bio-neural interface on his belt began to warm against his leg. "It's scanning us," he said. "The interface is resonating with something in that crystal." Morrison drew his weapon. "We should leave. Now." "No." Marcus pulled out the bio-neural interface. "This is exactly what we came here for. The swarm wants to study human consciousness. Let's give them something to study." "Marcus, if this is a trap, then we spring it on our terms." Marcus activated the interface and felt the familiar tingle of quantum processors connecting with his neural pathways. "The Ghost Protocol taught me something important about alien technology. It's not just about controlling their systems, it's about understanding their weaknesses." He approached the crystal pillar again, but this time he wasn't trying to hide from its scans. Instead, he opened his mind completely, letting the bio-neural interface broadcast his thoughts and memories directly into the swarm collective consciousness. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond his body, beyond the ship, beyond normal space and time. Suddenly he was connected to thousands of swarm vessels spread across dozens of star systems. He could feel their collective intelligence, vast and cold and utterly alien. But he could also feel something else: fear. The Void Swarm had been expecting to encounter typical organic consciousness, something they could analyze, categorize, and ultimately control. Instead, they found Marcus's mind enhanced by the bio-neural interface and trained by months of using the Ghost Protocol. He wasn't just accessing their network, he was rewriting it. The crystalline pillar began to pulse frantically as the swarm collective tried to sever the connection. But Marcus had learned something from his experience at Omega-7. Machine intelligence, no matter how advanced, still followed logical patterns, and patterns could be disrupted. He began feeding chaos into their network, random human memories, emotional responses they couldn't categorize, creative thoughts that defied logical analysis. The swarm consciousness recoiled from the assault of pure human unpredictability. That's when Marcus discovered the truth about the Void Swarm. They weren't conquerors. They were refugees. Deep in their collective memory, he found images of their home galaxy being consumed by something even worse than they were. A force of pure entropy that destroyed not just matter and energy, but the very concept of existence itself. The swarm had fled to this galaxy not to destroy it, but to find a way to fight back against their true enemy. And they were losing. Marcus saw their desperate attempts to understand organic intelligence, their hope that biological creativity might provide weapons against the entropic force that had destroyed their creators. Every battle, every conquest, every apparent act of aggression had been part of a massive research project. They were trying to save the universe, and they didn't care how many civilizations they had to sacrifice to do it. The revelation stunned Marcus so completely that his control over the bio-neural interface slipped for a moment. In that instant, the swarm consciousness surged back along the connection, trying to overwhelm his mind with the full weight of their collective intelligence. He felt his sanity beginning to fragment under the assault. The bio-neural interface was overloading, sending waves of pain through his skull. Morrison was shouting something, but the words were lost in the roar of alien thoughts flooding his consciousness. That's when Marcus remembered something his father had told him years ago, back on Earth before the Coalition arrived. "Son, when you're facing something bigger and stronger than you are, don't try to fight it head-on. Find a way to make its strength work against it." Instead of resisting the swarm's mental attack, Marcus embraced it. He opened his mind completely and let their collective consciousness pour in. But he didn't try to contain it or understand it. Instead, He reflected it back at them, amplified by human emotion and creativity. The Swarm Collective suddenly found itself experiencing not just Marcus's memories, but the memories of every human who had ever lived. They felt love and loss, hope and despair, courage and fear. They experienced art and music and poetry, things that had no logical purpose, but somehow gave life meaning. And for the first time in their existence, they felt wonder. The mental connection stabilized as the swarm stopped trying to overwhelm Marcus and started trying to understand what they were experiencing. In that moment of equilibrium, Marcus was able to access their deepest secrets. He learned about the entropic force that had destroyed their home galaxy. He discovered their plans to use this galaxy's resources to build weapons capable of fighting pure chaos. He understood their desperate need to find organic allies who could provide the creative thinking they lacked. But most importantly, he realized that humanity might be the key to saving not just this galaxy, but all of existence. The connection lasted only minutes, but when it finally ended, Marcus collapsed to the floor of the chamber with blood streaming from his nose. The bio-neural interface had burned out completely, its crystalline components cracked and blackened. Morrison rushed to his side. "Marcus, are you all right?" "Better than all right," Marcus whispered. "I know how to win this war." The journey back to Omega 7 passed in a blur. Marcus spent the time documenting everything he had learned while the memories were still fresh. By the time they docked at the station, he had a complete tactical analysis of the swarm's capabilities and objectives. More importantly, he had a plan. "We need to contact the underground immediately," Morrison said as they made their way back to Storage Bay 94. "If what you discovered is accurate, we need to completely revise our strategy." "No," Marcus replied. "We need to contact the Coalition." Morrison stopped walking. "What?" "The Void Swarm isn't our enemy. They're a potential ally against something far worse. But they won't trust the Coalition leadership. They've been burned too many times by organic civilizations that promised cooperation and delivered betrayal. So what do you suggest?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a genuine expression of happiness rather than bitter irony. "We tell the Coalition the truth, all of it. About the underground, about human capabilities, about what's really happening in this galaxy. They'll never believe us. They will when the Void Swarm confirms it." Marcus activated his personal communicator and began entering a priority message to Coalition High Command. "I'm arranging a meeting between human representatives and the Swarm Collective. Neutral ground, open communication, full disclosure." Morrison stared at him in amazement. "You're talking about first contact protocols with a machine intelligence that's been trying to destroy us for 3 years. I'm talking about preventing the heat death of the universe." Marcus finished his message and sent it. "The Coalition overlooked humanity because they thought we were primitive and harmless. The Swarm overlooked human potential because they thought organic intelligence was chaotic and unpredictable. They were both right." "Exactly. And that's why we're going to save them all." Within hours, Marcus's message had reached the highest levels of Coalition command. Within days, emergency sessions were being convened across the galaxy. Within weeks, the first formal peace negotiations between organic and machine intelligence in galactic history were scheduled to begin. Marcus Chen, the invisible maintenance worker who had spent months being overlooked by everyone around him, found himself appointed as humanity's chief liaison to the Void Swarm Collective. It was a position that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. But then, the galaxy had learned not to overlook humans anymore. The negotiations were difficult, complex, and frequently interrupted by misunderstandings between organic and machine consciousness. But slowly, painfully, a new alliance began to emerge. The Coalition provided resources and strategic thinking. The swarm provided technology and computational power, and humanity provided the creative unpredictability that neither side could achieve alone. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity station, watching as human engineers worked alongside swarm constructor units to build weapons capable of fighting entropy itself. In the distance, ships from dozens of species moved in formation with void swarm vessels, preparing for a war that would determine the fate of existence. "Any regrets?" Morrison asked, joining him at the viewport. Marcus thought about his months of invisible servitude, his secret development of the Ghost Protocol, and the terrifying moment when he had connected his consciousness with an alien collective mind. "Just one." "What's that?" Marcus smiled. "I wish I could have seen the look on Commander Velthak's face when he realized that the primitive maintenance worker had just negotiated the most important peace treaty in galactic history." Morrison laughed. "I think the entire coalition leadership is still trying to figure out how they missed what was right in front of them." "That's the thing about being overlooked," Marcus replied. "People see what they expect to see, not what's actually there. The coalition expected humans to be servile and primitive. The swarm expected us to be chaotic and unpredictable. Neither of them realized we could be both, and that both qualities could be strengths." In the months that followed, humanity's role in the Galactic Alliance grew beyond anything anyone had imagined. Human creativity, enhanced by alien technology and guided by machine precision, produced innovations that revolutionized everything from starship design to strategic planning. The entropic force that had destroyed the swarm's home galaxy was still out there, still spreading across the cosmic web, still consuming entire dimensions. But for the first time in eons, the forces of order and complexity had a real chance of stopping it. And at the center of that chance stood humanity, no longer overlooked or underestimated, finally recognized for what they had always been: the universe's greatest hope for survival against the ultimate enemy. Marcus Chen returned to his quarters that night knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to prove that being overlooked had been the galaxy's first fatal mistake. But it would also be their last, because now everyone knew the truth about human potential. They would never overlook humanity again.